Welcome to MGAA Conversations, our new podcast channel where we'll be discussing with an exciting number of guests all things related and topical within the ever-growing MGA community. Welcome to the latest episode of MGAA Conversations. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Rob Gibbs, President and CEO of SiriusPoint International. Rob, very good morning to you. How are you doing?
Morning, Mike. Great to be here. I've been following these podcasts for a while, and it's great to be contributing. So looking forward to the session.
Fantastic. And I understand you're not in the UK at the moment.
No, so as we're partnering more and more with MGAs across the globe, I'm actually in Athens with one of our partners. So it's all part of our proposition and how we collaborate. So great to be here, understanding all about the marine market here in I guess the birth of marine in Greece.
Absolutely. So, Rob, just before we get into sort of some of the themes which we're really looking forward to talking to you about, just perhaps just give us a bit of a sort of background on SiriusPoint for, in particular, our listeners who may not be too familiar.
Yeah, happy to do so. So if you're anything like me, 2 years ago, I hadn't really heard of SiriusPoint. 23 years in the market working for RSA. And actually, when I left RSA, I was looking for an entrepreneurial company where the bones were really good and a growth agenda. And SiriusPoint is a global insurer and reinsurer. It's $3.5 billion of premium worldwide. We have licenses to trade globally, and I'm really proud to lead the international business, which is all about growing insurance, both in Lloyd's. We have a successful aviation and space team in Zurich, and we have a growing MGA delegated book that we write out of the London branch and also our Stockholm office.
So very exciting times. So that gives us a sort of nice sort of lead into market dynamics. So, you know, obviously you're an excellent sort of deployer of capital to the right sort of MGAs. You know, how do you see the current sort of landscape for sort of MGAs and capital?
So I think it's fair to say it's a really exciting time for MGAs. Overall, I'd describe it as a vibrant and thriving sector. I see more and more talent joining the MGA market. I see expertise right at the heart of all of the MGAs. And I see MGAs moving, I guess, 10 to 15 years ago. I'd see a lot of what I'd call volume-based MGAs, but now movement to more niche and specialist propositions. And I guess, as you can imagine, having just joined SiriusPoint and put together the strategy 18 months ago, I did quite a lot of research on where we could grow. And certainly I always reference the Clyde & Co. MGA opinion report, which I think for any of your listeners, that is a great reference in terms of market dynamics and trends. So, you know, any stats I use, quite a lot of them come from there. But I guess what I'm seeing is, dare I say, referencing the pandemic, the sector's lifted its head up post the pandemic. I think there was a point where capacity was short-lived, and I don't see that anymore. And I see, as I said, a vibrant sector. We've seen over 200 potential MGA partners in the last 10 months, which tells you how vibrant the sector is. But the other thing I see is that there is a greater level of scrutiny, both from us as carriers, certainly looking at data, technology, underwriting standards, but equally a greater level of scrutiny from the regulator, which I think is welcome, because that is all about driving customer proposition, customer value. The other thing I see is that there is definitely a prevalence of investment from the MGAs in technology. The Clyde & Co. report states that over 80% of MGAs have invested in technology in the last 12 to 18 months, as compared with, I guess, more traditional carriers, which is closer to 50%. And I guess that's quite stark. But at the heart of it, an MGA has to stand for something. It has to deliver something, and invariably, as I said, that's about fulfilling a niche, be it a specialist underwriting niche or a distribution niche. Um, and I do see, I guess, the shoulders back, the chest out from the MGA market, be greater confidence in what they bring to the marketplace, which is great to see.
That's great insight, Rob. There's a couple of things I'd like to pick up on your conversation there. So, when you look at SiriusPoint, and obviously you've been there 2 years, where do you feel sort of, through your experience, and I know you've built a very sort of dynamic team around you, where do you see that SiriusPoint are sort of redefining that sort of MGA partnership and that level of differentiation you can give when you sit down with potential sort of MGA partners?
Yeah. So I guess though I've only been here 18 months to 2 years, we've actually have quite a long-standing partnership with the delegated authority or program administrator space. So our North American and A&H teams have been partnering in that space for some time. What I've done is built and learned from those teams, but actually created a centre of excellence, as we call it, in the UK and across Stockholm to serve that international MGA space. What we've looked at is redefining the rules of partnership, and that's we've done quite a lot of listening and market insight with a very trusted agency.
Okay.
And I think I'd admit our mindset shifted quite a lot in terms of our proposition is now around being a quality partner, being an understanding partner, and actually how that translates is that MGAs are our priority. So it's of course it's our paper. It has those MGAs have to perform, but our MGA partners are more than a distribution channel. We put them right at the center of our
Okay.
business. We put a team around those MGAs so they create individualized support and control, so that from day one we design a different partnership model. And I guess we empower the MGAs to thrive. So it's giving them the freedom to what they do best and amplify their expertise rather than it being about something we do on the end of our desk or
Right.
something that we do as an afterthought. Um, and I guess, of course, the fundamentals, as we call them, are important. So we have global licenses to trade, we have capital to fund growth, we have capacity and expertise across all the product lines. But I guess the centre of excellence is less about the what and more about the how we partner. And I think that's where our proposition is become a real differentiator. And since I joined SiriusPoint, the international business is doubled, and the MGA and delegated space has been a real driver for that.
That's great. And if I may just come back to your earlier point, because I always ask the same this question to people like yourself and your peers, but would you agree that when you engage with sort of MGA partners now, that the depth and breadth of their expertise, underwriting knowledge, risk appetite, the professionalism of the sector is probably as high as you may have seen it over the last 15, 20 years? Would you agree with that sentiment?
100%. I actually think it's the highest it's ever been. So,
Right.
and I think back to my earlier point on what role MGAs fulfill now in the market, I think they're less about volume and more about value, if that
Yeah.
makes sense for customers. I think all of the research that I've done says that customers in the international space, they're less focused on brand, they're more focused on proposition and value of that proposition. And that's where I think MGAs can provide a real differentiator. I guess to give you, some more stats from the Climate Code report, there's over 300 MGAs in the UK, 60 billion of premium. They're growing roughly 10% year on year, and that's 10% of the market. And the stats in the US, I mean, 600 MGAs, 47 billion of premium. They have to be delivering something successful for the marketplace to survive.
Yeah.
And invariably, that is about a value proposition uh, and leveraging the talent in the market to deliver for our customers. I think the other thing that's interesting, and I talked about investment in MGAs previously, but private equity is actually flooding into that space. I think in 2020, 6% of PE firms were investing in MGAs, and that's doubled in 2023.
Yeah.
So I think we've got this unique mix of value proposition coming to the fore, talent joining the MGA market, and then those trends around investment, which means that I think that sector, as I called it, vibrant and thriving, I think will continue to grow and continue to deliver for the sector for sure.
And given that you're currently in Athens, just give us a little bit of a view about sort of the European sort of MGA landscape and how you're tapping into that sort of talent and whatever.
Yes, so I think, I mean, statistics are really hard to find in Europe. I'm sure you know
Yeah,
that yourself,
yeah,
Mike, in terms of the trends. But I would say that the European market is slightly behind the UK. But I would say equally, the European market has learned from, if you like, the pitfalls of the UK 15
okay,
to 20 years ago. So I think a lot of the MGAs that were started 20 years ago were about volume and almost consolidating books of business. That is less the case in the UK, and certainly Scandinavia and Europe have sort of jumped that stage. They're now actually about delivering bespoke propositions in different sectors. So we are talking to SME MGAs based in France, quite a lot of marine
yeah,
MGAs across Europe, and they are delivering very definitive and definite propositions for the sectors that they're operating in. As you mentioned, I'm here in Athens. This is our access to the Greek marine
yeah,
market.
sure.
It's very relationship based, and hence we chose our partner very carefully. I think the other trend I'm seeing in Europe is that our partnership approach is very different. So an MGA said to me, and I won't name them, Rob, we'll need a little bit more support from you because we're at the beginning of our journey. And the good news is the model that we've created isn't just around underwriting and claims. We actually have deployed some of our tax specialists
All right, okay.
to support our MGAs because as the world globalizes, IPT is a skill set that they might not have invested
Yeah,
in yet, but obviously we have that to support MGAs as we build that proposition. So again, not just pure technical expertise, but a broader proposition that we wrap around some of our partners.
yeah.
So it is interesting. It's I would say Europe's slightly behind the UK, but catching up very quickly. And certainly, I do see the same level of expertise and in the niches, but equally investment in things like data, underwriting, expertise, definitely across all parts of the.
Yeah, it goes to the theme. It goes to the theme which you talked about earlier around sort of a real deep and broad partnership in terms of that sort of outside just the underwriting and that piece, which is I think is extremely exciting and certainly not say the next, it's the model which I think all successful organisations will sort of move to from that bit. Just picking up again, Rob, and I agree entirely about how vibrant the sector is. What sort of advice would you give to sort of a new MGA, certainly around the capacity bit, because you and I will know there's always this sort of particularly could be hamstrung in the fact that you haven't got any data because you're a startup. You want to get capital, you want to get a partner, and then you tend to get on a hamster wheel by saying, well, you've got no data, so we're not sure we can really support you. And of course the MGA said, well, I can't get any data and still start trading, whatever. What would be your sort of insight and advice to those organisations?
So I guess we speak to quite a lot of startups as well as established MGAs, and I guess, as I said, our job is to support MGAs to thrive. But what I would also say, realistically, it's probably no longer enough in today's world to just be a great underwriter and just want to be independent. I think a track record of profitability, of course, a technical expertise in a distinct niche is absolutely key. And that will help to build a business case. And obviously, there's things like LMA data that you can leverage when you don't have your own. But I guess some of the, rather than advice, some of the questions I'd probably pose to some of the MGAs that are starting up is, what is your data strategy? How are you, when you capture that data, leveraging it? How do you enhance it using that external data? What's your customer strategy? I mean, Mike, you and I know that oversight of distribution from the FCA, equally the Swedish FSA, and European regulators is only rising for the right reasons to protect customers. But, what adjustments are you making for vulnerable customers that you might have in your portfolio? Can you adapt to the various jurisdictions that you're operating in? And I guess some of those are really becoming table stakes, if you like, or entry, I guess, barriers to starting up an MGA. And the reality is, though, that they carry as much weight in today's world as trading performance. And that's why I guess we've set our proposition around an all-encompassing sort of collaborative partnership, because understanding your customer base, being a strong technician, is almost a given in today's world. There's all those other questions that you need to consider, particularly data, particularly consumer duty, oversight of distribution, that are fundamentals to operating in today's world.
Yeah, and you've touched upon sort of the next theme, which I know our listeners would be keen on your insight, is around the regulatory landscape. So if I could ask you sort of just to look at the UK landscape. So I suppose my first question really, and again, interested in your response, what is your sense around the barometer? Is it overburdened? Is it actually suffocating organisations? Has Matt and the team got it right? What's your sense in terms of where we are in that journey currently?
I think the regulators and I guess the regulatory burden, I actually think it is right. I think the reality is insurers, MGAs, have to adapt to that regulation, because it's there to protect our customers, and we all exist to serve our customers. As I said, gone are the days where I guess, I used to underwrite. I had the great idea, I want to set up an MGA. There's so much more consideration, and the landscape has definitely changed in the last 10 years. But so are the requirements. So as a carrier, I have to prove oversight of distribution. I have to prove that I have sense checked that the MGA and all of the partners in the chain understand the requirements of the customers, that there's fair value, that the products are articulated. And I guess if you flip it on its head and say, well, we just assume fair value, or we assume that the product's understood, that's not a great place to be in. I think we have to be proactive in underlining that we are serving a niche, as an insurer and as a partner of MGAs, and that we've made the necessary adjustments for different customers, different customer bases and also different environments, because ultimately it is about serving customers, and therefore, we should be looking at declinature reasons on claims, rates of declinature. And I guess the reality is, I know this all costs money, but it is achievable. And that's part of the whole sort of partnership model, part of the whole ecosystem we've all got to work to. And I think that's, in a way, how the world is evolving. So data should be at the heart of what we do. If you can get the right data, that regulatory burden should be less. If you partner with the right carrier, then actually there's support there around how you meet those requirements of the regulators. But I actually do think that some of these regulatory oversight can actually act as a positive differentiator for the sector, because if MGAs can prove responsiveness, dynamism in responding to customer needs, that would set them apart. So I do think, I know people talk around regulatory burden, but actually I do look back to 10, 15 years ago when actually there wasn't some of these requirements in place, and I did worry at times that we weren't serving our customers as best we could, Mike. I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's great insight, and I was the one who actually introduced the word burden, yeah. so I have to take that on the chin. I suppose I could have used the word proportionate, but you talk to a lot of people in the market as well I do, and I think the word burden is sort of it's slightly ingrained currently from that perspective. If I could just sort of circle back again, Rob, on the same theme. So one of the challenges or stroke concerns when I speak to members, and whether it's around regulation being proportionate or burden, and let's use proportionate because I think you've put a great sort of articulated a great argument from that perspective. One of the concerns is that there is a cost of regulation both for the MGA and for you as a capital provider, and that has to go naturally into any financial model between capital and an MGA. And because we all know that MGA business generally is quite sort of, is quite fine margin. It's a margin business because obviously there's a increase in cost of distribution and we don't have to go into sort of a financial modeling. But one of the sort of challenges and conversations I've had with a number of members and from capital is that if that proportionate regulatory cost continues to increase, that will put a lot of strain on financial models, and therefore that puts strain on margins. So I suppose my question really is that, do you see potentially that if the direction of travel around regulation, starts to increase and that cost, i.e., let's boil it down, that SiriusPoint have to employ another 5 or 6 compliance executives, and that cost has to be transferred into an MGA model. Do you see a point where actually those margins become quite challenging in terms of whether capital will be deployed, or do you see that should be smooth through?
There is no doubt there is a cost to running and partnering with MGAs in Europe and the UK. I guess I see it more, as I said previously, as a cost to serve and just part of our cost model. We don't partner with MGAs, and I don't think any of the market do this, because having worked at RSA for 23 years and now joining SiriusPoint, I think the average tenure of a partnership is 7 to 9 years. So actually, you have to look at the long-term partnership. Without a doubt, you need to choose your partners carefully. And though some of this may come through in the acquisition cost and obviously operating expenses, invariably, if an MGA is targeting and leveraging their data, their expertise, they should outperform on loss ratio. So I do think there's a mix in there. But I think what we're seeing is a correction rather than a continued, if you like,
Okay.
up of
Okay.
regulatory sort of oversight. And as I said, um, I think more and more with some of the boardroom management tools you see out there, some of the data capture, a lot of the regulatory oversight, or certainly the oversight of carriers to prove that we know who we're partnering with, we know that there's assessment of vulnerable customers, we know claims declination rates, etc., can be fulfilled with better data capture, better analytics around MGAs. And
Yeah.
that's why I think we see equally some of the investment flooding into this sector as well. So do I think there'll be a continual step up of regulatory standards? I, I don't think it will continue as it has in the previous 10 years, because actually I think we've evolved quite a lot as both the carrier but also an MGA sector. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that's great. That's great advice, actually, because there's an alignment with MGAs around the technology and data, which you've aptly highlighted. And as we both know, that the regulator wants to become a more data-led organisation, okay, in terms of satisfying customer needs. And I think if MGAs are investing in that sort of data analysis, then they should be able to meet, as you say, the regulatory environment, quite well. So I think that's a really good insight in terms of where MGAs should perhaps be ensuring that data management is such that it's not just around underwriting; it also covers that regulatory oversight as well. And I think that's really good advice from that perspective. Okay. We talked at the start, Rob, around, and you articulated about how vibrant the sector was, and obviously you gave a great endorsement as a capital provider on the professionalism of the sector. You look across the UK again, and you see brokers talking around challenges around service levels. We all read the same sort of insurance press. Do you see any sort of slowing down? Do you see any sort of sliding door moment which effectively would derail the sort of buoyancy and the progress of the MGA sector?
No, I'll be honest. I've done so much research, Mike, over the last 12 to 18 months in putting the strategy together. I'm 100% confident that it'll continue in terms of the buoyant trajectory. I think for a number of reasons. I think MGAs have now realised the role they play in the sector. So to deliver for that specific niche. So, there's a role for carriers who are generalists who provide, volume SME products.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's the MGA sector role so much anymore. I think it's more about specific niche, either in underwriting or distribution. As I talked before, I do see financial backing coming in because customers want that nimbleness. They want innovative solutions, and I think the MGAs can provide that in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, there's so much investment in technology in the MGA sector. As I said, 80% I think are investing year on year in new technology, and that does set them aside from more the traditional carrier market. I think the other thing is I definitely see a movement of talent towards the MGA sector.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's people who want to control their destiny more as an individuals, or actually see better ways that they could serve customers. But in a way, it probably doesn't matter the reason. There is definitely that trend, and
Yeah.
that does mean that expertise is flooding into the MGA sector, and again, that perpetuates the innovative solutions for customers.
Yeah.
That does mean that service standards should rise. And we talked before around, the cost of regulatory requirements. Actually, I do see MGAs using data to provide solutions and better insights, rather than, I guess, the traditional model of bums on seats the process. The technology's taking the strain. So yes, the cost of regulation might be going up, but technology can provide those better insights, better solutions to customers. And I guess all of these angles mean that it's a pretty compelling time for the MGA. But I guess, and this is a big but, the fundamentals of underwriting and technical expertise and data have to be in place, Mike.
Yeah. No. Well, a very strong endorsement, Rob, and I know our listeners will be very, very pleased, certainly those in the MGA sector, to hear that from you and from your sort of position of strength and that bit. So look, just finally, Rob, sort of, it's been fantastic talking to you. But I always ask this question for our guests. So if, as I hope, we're having this same conversation in 12 months' time, and who knows what part of the world you'll be in if we have that conversation then, what would you like to sort of be able to share with me in terms of playing forward sort of 12 months for SiriusPoint? What would you like to have achieved and over that next 12-month period?
Well, so we're on I guess our fix-up days are over. So we're on a scale and diversification journey, and that's why we're partnering with specialist MGAs across the international sector. So I'd like us to further establish ourselves as a partner. So, rolling out our proposition and what I talked about earlier. I'd like people to talk about how we partner, not just what we bring, Mike. And I think that will be different in terms of, a partnership in the market. And that talks to our quality people. So we've hired, every week we're hiring some decent, underwriting expertise and program managers and investing in our centre of excellence. So I hope people will be talking about the quality people who are putting a proposition around our MGAs to allow them to shine. So I guess in summary, we're growing, we're profitable, we're respected as a true partner. And importantly, I'd love our customers to be saying that SiriusPoint's a quality partner who listens, provides a framework, structured support, individualized support to allow them to thrive in the market.
Fantastic. Well, you're certainly, as the market sort of, sort of jungle drum sort of talk about, you're certainly a long way down that particular path, Rob. So all the best in terms of achieving that, and I'm sure when we speak in 12 months' time, you'll be endorsing all those things which you've just done. So look, Rob Gibbs, President and CEO of SiriusPoint International, thanks very much for talking to the MGAA. Enjoy Athens, and no doubt we'll catch up together some point between now and the end of the year. But thanks very much for all your time.
Thanks, Mike. I've really enjoyed it.
Many thanks for listening. We welcome all feedback, so please get in touch with your suggestions on topics and future guests. Please don't forget to subscribe on your chosen platform so that you don't miss out.